to Graphic Policy Radio. This is your host, Ilana Levin, a.k.a. Ilana Brooklyn, a.k.a. Ilana. Oh my God, it's bi-week and I haven't done anything yet. And this is a comics podcast. Usually. But there's just been so much groundbreaking, emotionally intelligent action, adventure, animation happening these days that we've been having a number of episodes about it. And today's is going to be all about She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, seasons 2 and 3. Of course, it also helps that the show is queer as hell and has a lot of political undertones to it. And we are excited to have the opportunity to dig into seasons 2 and 3 now. We've covered season 1 already. I encourage folks to give that episode a listen. It was pretty fabulous. And we're going to be doing spoilers for seasons 2 and 3. So if you don't know if you should watch She-Ra or not, maybe check out the beginning of our episode covering 1 and then watch the whole darn thing and then join us now. And in fact, joining us again is one of my guests from the coverage we did on She-Ra season 1. That is Mey Rude. Mey is a queer, trans, and fat Latina living in LA, where she works as a trans consultant and a culture and entertainment writer for Out.com. She loves nerds, Judy Hopps, and talking about her feelings. Welcome back, Mey.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be back.
Yay. And joining me to talk She-Ra for the first time, actually first time on the show period, is Samantha Puc. Samantha is an essayist and culture critic who frequently writes about LGBTQ and fat characters in fiction. She is the managing editor of The Beat, which is a comics website that I write for a lot as well. It is an awesome comics website. Samantha is also the co-creator and editor-in-chief of Fatventure Mag, an outdoor zine for fat folks who are into being active but not into toxic weight loss culture. She lives in Montana with her partner and cats, and that magazine sounds amazing. Welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm super stoked to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I want to just jump in and talk to season 2 and 3. I really am regarding them as being one season because they're both so short. It felt more like the end of 2 was a mid-career high point, not a mid-career, a mid-season high point. So I'm just going to be sort of speaking about it as a whole. But I can tell that there's tons of enthusiasm ongoing for the show, just as much, I think, as there was for season 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I might have to check to see if this is like information that you have to delete. But Netflix split up the second season into seasons 2 and 3. When they made the show, they were making that as one season, and so that's why it feels so split up.
Oh.
It's interesting that you say that too, because to me, when I was watching season 2, it very much felt like the back half of season 1.
Oh.
So I feel as though there's very much a level of continuity between the seasons that I guess I don't really experience with other shows so much, and I don't know if that's the release format or just the way that Noelle Stevenson and her team are handling things as far as like the plots go, but yeah, I always feel as if each cliffhanger, each ending very much naturally flows into the next premiere, and it feels like there's no time missing between seasons, which I kind of like.
Yeah, I love that too. It has such a great flow to the whole thing.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like the rate that the show has been coming out has been feeling really rapid. Like I haven't felt like I've had to wait very long. It's kind of incredible, and I hope the team is, has a chance to sleep in the middle of all of this.
Yeah, I agree. It's only a few months between seasons, which on the one hand is really cool because we're never lacking in new She-Ra content, but then on the other hand, I do hope that everybody's getting lots of rest and staying hydrated.
Yeah, well, it's done being animated, it's done being written. I think that the voice recording is also done. Like, they're just finishing it up now. The whole show.
Oh.
Oh. How much more is there?
That I don't remember.
Wow.
But yeah, they've completed the whole show. Yeah.
I don't think that's true of anything I've heard about for television. Like, period.
Well, yeah, I don't think most finish the show, but a lot of animation especially is done, a long time before we see it.
That makes sense because there's so much that has to go into it. And I know that Noelle has talked about how, they've been working on it for years. It's just not something that we saw until the hype started last year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that makes sense. But yeah, that's a
I'm
weird thing
wondering
to
if
think about. They're like coming to us from the past.
It is so wild. I mean, I think definitely with a show that's so heavy in lore and world building and continuity, and a show where there really aren't any standalone episodes, with a couple exceptions, which I will hit on later, like it makes sense that it was written as a whole. And I think it definitely helps the show have that continuity and sort of a big epic saga feel to it, that it's been written that way.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
One of the things that I think is also interesting is, like, we know in, like, the case of Steven Universe and Adventure Time, that the fact that it took time between different seasons for the show to be written ended up impacting what we saw on the screen, namely, like, fans and our relationship to the show, as well as the creative team's insistence on being allowed to make things queerer. And in She-Ra, we have a show where they basically were given clearance at the start to be able to make things at least a certain amount queer. We will talk later about how queer. A certain amount queer from the start. So maybe the fact that it's all in the can already won't become a limitation for that. But it kind of does make me wonder, like, does this mean that we don't have any space to ask for more? You know?
Yeah, I hear you, and I feel as though I don't think anybody really knew just how big of an impact this show would have, or how popular it would be. I don't know what Netflix's viewer numbers look like, and I know that that's not usually information that they release, but from what I can tell, everybody that I know watches this show, and everybody loves it, and that's people with kids, that's people without kids. You know, it appeals to such a wide and broad audience, which is really powerful, but also definitely indicates to me, at least as both an entertainment reporter and also just as a fan of TV, that there's a high likelihood that we will get more, and I hope that that's the case. And it does, to speak to your point, Alana, it does make me wonder about, you know, if we're asking questions, or if we pose things as a fandom or as viewers or as reporters, whether the team will have the opportunity to address those things in, like, new episodes, if this becomes a continuing thing after this first wave of episodes is done airing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And, like, I do not know any spoilers, but I have complete trust that Noelle Stevenson is gonna make the gayness as gay as it can be, like, more than it has been so far, which has been explicitly.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? In Noelle we trust.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, I think that the show's done amazing things, like having Bo's dads be featured in this season. Bo has two dads.
Yeah.
They're adorable, and I love it. You know, is really great. When I was putting together the post on Twitter asking folks to send us their questions, I wanted to, in honor of Bye Week, make sure that the GIF that I was posting was as queer as possible. And I realized that most of my sort of queer She-Ra GIFs that I had was all stuff from Princess Prom. I was like, there's been a dearth of additional GIF making. And I was like, okay, well, I wish we had, you know, GIFs from Huntara and literally everything from the, you know,
when a dwarf just first sees Huntara.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorites.
But I'm just trying to sort of think, like, what were the big queer moments from this season that, like, really should have been in GIFs, even though they did not exist yet?
I know that a lot of the shipping culture around this show is all about Catra and Adora, which I totally understand and support wholeheartedly. But I think there's a lot of content between Scorpia and Catra that just doesn't get talked about.
Yeah, when Catra literally grabs Scorpia by the claw and is, like, laughing and running, like, and it shows Scorpia, like, blushing and being like, oh wow, like, it's because she's been having these feelings, you can see all season.
Yeah, for sure.
That
and, like, watching
oof.
It's a lot, and especially watching Scorpia so clearly have these feelings for Catra, and Catra just being so blinded by her betrayal by Adora, like the feelings that she has about how their friendship fell apart. It's kind of sad to watch, because it's very clear that Scorpia very much wants to be, like, Catra's number one, and that's just not in the cards currently. And I don't know if it will
It's-
ever be, just
yeah.
because Catra is so kind of distant and broken in a way.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating. It's so hard because like Catra does not understand Adora leaving her as being a political act at all. Like she views it just as being, you left me. She doesn't understand that there's actually like, I left an abusive situation. I'm asking you to leave it with me, but you're not able to see yourself existing outside of it. And she doesn't understand that, like, you're part of a fascist organization. Like, you should leave that now that we have other options. And Catra just views it as being a rejection of her as an individual. And that's just so tragic. And then, meanwhile, with Scorpia, I mean, Scorpia obviously is so enamored of her. And it's just really unclear to me if Catra has the potential to appreciate her. And if the best that, like, we could get out of this is like having Scorpia realize that like Catra is not capable of being the friend or romantic partner or whatever that like she really deserves here. But I think it's also interesting though that the show, she always says like, I want to be her friend. She never says, sorry.
No, you're,
Catra,
I was going to say,
sorry. It just, go ahead.
No, you keep talking. You're good.
Samantha? Okay.
Can you hear me?
So the thing is, like, Scorpia looks like an older teenager, certainly at minimum. And Scorpia's framing of how she describes her friendship with Catra is like, I want to be her friend. She says, like, you mean everything to me. And the fact that, Scorpia is not capable of like being like, I want you to be my girlfriend. It can only just put it in these more like childlike terms almost. It's just hard for me to negotiate if I think that that's the show saying that because they have a young audience, or if that's something about the character and how she's been sort of stuck in this emotionally terrible environment. Are there even couples in the Horde? Like, is that a thing that you're even allowed to be?
Like they don't have parties, they don't have birthdays.
Yeah.
Like it would make sense that they don't have couples, but also I do think probably some of it has to do with like the age of the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that both of those things are relevant when talking about the Scorpia and Catra relationship, but I think this is a spoiler, but there's a moment in season 3 where Scorpia is very much like, hey, what if we just stayed here? Like you and me, what if we stayed in the Crimson Waste and we just like built a life here? Mm-hmm. And you can see that that's something that she really wants, whether it's in terms of, a friendship or a partnership, a romantic partnership or whatever. But Catra is just so focused on sort of getting back at the person who hurt her that it leaves Scorpia in this position of clearly wanting, that space for the two of them. And I think that moment, for me at least as an audience member, that seems like the moment when Scorpia realizes that she's never going to get what she wants from her relationship with Catra. Mm-hmm. And then that just continues as Catra sort of devolves into this, like, supremely evil being who's willing to literally destroy the world in order to get what she wants. And it's just so, so sad. Because I feel like Scorpia is trying really hard to, like, almost fix Catra and sort of heal her, and it just doesn't work.
She literally swaddles Catra.
Yeah.
And, like, whispers to her, like, you're gonna be alright, we're both alright. And, but then, in the final episode, we see Catra threaten to knock out Scorpia, just like she did with Entrapta.
Yeah.
And then, like, there, like, you can really see, like, I think the complete, like, loss of hope on Scorpia's side.
Yeah, I think when we come back to them, we'll see them both, we'll see Scorpia having a different attitude towards things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would have been so beautiful if they had been able to run off in the Red Waste. I have to say, honestly, Once Upon a Time in the Waste has got to be my favorite title of a episode on anything. I'm a big like classic film geek, and like Once Upon a Time in the West is Spaghetti Western by Sergio Leone, like total classic.
Yeah.
And like just this what's so cool to me is like this show in the last season I think it really experimented with genre for the first time. It had 2 episodes that were Westerns, right?
One of them is basically Mad Max from like the original Mad Max.
It had one episode that's a horror story, like the one where they're trying to communicate with the ghosts of the first ones. I'm not an expert at like movies like The Ring, but it kind of felt a little bit like a bit of a Japanese horror movie feel to it.
Yeah, and there's the D&D episode.
Yes, so good.
Literal D&D episode. Yes, thank you. Yes, they literally play D&D. What other genres do we have here?
I'm trying to think, like, what other genres are represented. There's also that element of, like, really intense sci-fi in the episode where she's opened the portal and, like, the world is collapsing.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. Like, you literally get, like, a version of Catra who's, like, half creepy, like, robot cyclops creature.
Yeah. And we have, like, the teen comedy of the episode where we meet Bo's dads.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, man. I love it. Like, Bo is feeling like he has to still, like, can't fully be himself around his dads.
Yeah.
And, like, it's such an interesting, because, you know, so many of these movies, like, you have queer kids and they can't be straight, they can't express themselves in front of their parents. And in his case, he has queer dads, and he's also still struggling with, like, how he's going to be able to express his identity in front of his dads. And it makes me think, you know, like, there's a lot of, like, you know, Bo might be trans, it's not necessarily clear. But, like, that this is maybe one of the reasons why his parents come around is because they've seen him and be like, oh, well, we don't want to be the source of you having to, like, repress yourself.
Yeah, like, obviously, like, nothing's been confirmed about him being trans, but he's so trans-coded in, like, so many great ways. With, like, when he, like, wore a top when they were in the hot tub or whatever in season 1. Like, all this embarrassment about, like, them showing baby pictures of him. Like, there's so much that just is really great trans coding that I think, like, trans mask viewers particularly, get a ton out of, and I really love that part of the show.
Yeah. That episode was just great. Like, I don't know, it helped build the character of Bo to, like, you understand where he came from and how you know, his own story arc, really.
Well, and I love, too, that it gave us sort of even more insight into his friendship with Glimmer. You know, because they're super tight and they've known each other forever, but they haven't really known each other forever, and there are lots of things that he keeps really locked down. And so it was interesting to kind of get sort of into that piece of his life, and also to see how Glimmer and Adora dealt with that. And to recognize that even though they're, you know, the best friends trio, they all still have these very separate individual lives that they have to sort of reconcile with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like, that echoes back to the Princess Prom episode again, when Glimmer was mad at Bo because she was like, oh, we're best friends, we're supposed to do everything together.
Yes.
And she's continuing to learn that they aren't, like, a couple, they aren't the same person, they each have their own lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think often when I watch this show, there's actually Mindy Kaling wrote in one of her books that best friend is not like a ranking, it's a tier. And I think about that a lot with the way that the princesses interact with each other and the way that Bo interacts with them, and even Seahawk, you know, like they're all friends and they're all kind of on this level with each other, and it's really interesting to see them sort of navigate those relationships as they move through the series.
Yeah,
I feel like we had less of the other princesses this season than we did before.
Yeah, they were there, like, early on, but then it kind of focused in on Catra and Scorpia, and then the best friend squad at the second half.
And the adults also, the adult generation.
Yeah,
we really got to look at them for the first time. I mean, the reason I just bring that up, and I love that those areas that it's explored, but is that one of the things that appealed to me about the show was that, in the first place, was that it's She-Ra and the princesses of power. And I don't like the idea of there being, like, a lone savior. Like, that's just not a trope that appeals to me politically. And one of the things that I've liked about the show is how much of it is her and Glimmer really, like, organizing the other folks in the land to be able to stand up and fight back themselves. and to I want to see that expand to include people beyond princesses more than it has.
Yeah. Well, can we talk about the like absolute end of season 3?
Yeah,
where Adora is going to sacrifice herself. She says, "I have to do this. It's my destiny." And then, wait, I'm blanking on
Angela.
Angela is like, "No, like other people can help you. You don't have to do this by yourself. I'm going to do this part." And I love that. Like, it's very sad and very moving, but I think it really does a great job of showing exactly what you're saying, that Adora can't do this by herself, no matter how much like she thinks she has to.
And it's also important for the adults to step up. Like, if someone's going to make a sacrifice, it should be a grown-up, like, adult and not a child.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, and I think, too, that, you know, obviously Angela's sacrifice is going to mean so much for Glimmer. Mm-hmm. Like, she really, because she's already stepped up in so many ways. Like, Glimmer, you know, at the start of season 1 is really kind of childish in the way that she deals with her mom and her responsibilities as a princess. And then, you know, as she moves through the series, she becomes a lot more mature, and she really kind of starts to embrace the responsibility of what she's doing and to organize others, like you were saying. But now, I mean, I don't know what the rules of royalty are in Etheria, but my guess would be that she's going to have to take her mom's spot as queen, and that's going to really change the way that her dynamic with Bo and Shira and the other princesses works and functions.
And she's a character who's expressed so much frustration with her mom having to operate in the realm of politics. And now she's going to be the one who has to actually look at political concerns when making decisions.
Dang,
for once.
Yeah.
So, welcome to our side of the world. The other piece with the adults is just like we see all these flashbacks, and you know, we wanted to know more about Shadow Weaver and like where, you know, how she came to her situation. And I'm still really struggling. Well, there's so much amazing voice acting from that actress this season, as per always. But
Lorraine Toussaint.
Yes, Lorraine Toussaint.
Yeah, she's fabulous.
I love her.
But I'm still like, I don't know. I feel like we haven't fully reconciled the whole, like, the, you know, she becomes like, presumably, I guess, scarred or physically altered in some way because she becomes evil, and she's like the only character who has a sort of mask where she's hiding her face and she's the evil one. It's still this, I believe that the show could do something to make that work and feel different, but it still hasn't gotten there yet.
Yeah, I think because maybe because the whole show has already been written, like they just have that conclusion reached later, and because we're in the middle of an already finished story, we just haven't seen that play out yet. That could be possible.
Well, and she's not the only one who has like physical deformities, because Hordak, his suit quite literally keeps him functioning. It's very Darth Vader-esque in that sense, but I do understand what you're saying about.
He's evil, right? Like he's like evil. So it's just, I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking about the symbolism of the fact that she was called Light Spinner back before she went bad, and then Shadow Weaver, and she's dark and she's evil. Like, it's not the greatest look.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about Hordak, because this is the season where Hordak becomes a full-fledged character.
Yes.
I love the fact that it's revealed that he is a clone, that he's been sitting around there trying to make more clones of himself, that little, you know, like the Bamfs from X-Men, the little sprite-like version, that's totally a failed clone of him.
Yeah.
His, like, little pet that sits in his lap and he pets it, that is a failed clone of him. That's so
wild.
terrible and wonderful. It's just terrible and wonderful. He's like, I have failed to clone myself. My cat is me. Good Lord. But like, and you know, but like, what does it take to make Hordak sympathetic? So what does it take? It takes us being clear that he has physical disability that he's struggling with, that he's experiencing pain, that being in this world that he's in is causing him pain, and that he has a bigger boss breathing over his shoulder, and that he has feelings of inferiority. So those are the things that it takes to make us feel sympathy for him. But he's still literally a fascist leader. I don't know. What do you guys think about Hordak? How should we feel about Hordak? What do you think about the direction that they're taking us with the character?
Well, so before I get into anything else, since it's bi-week, I want to say that Hordak is like a daddy now. Like, he looks great in that new exoskeleton. Like, I don't know what they did, but he went from
It's what
like a
Entrapta
scary
did
monster guy to a sexy monster guy, and I'm loving that.
Entrapta, it was her magic.
Entrapta, she did it. She knows. She
really
did that on
did.
purpose.
Yeah, she did.
She's like, gotta make him look good.
Well, they're friends now, so she has to help him. That's
Oh,
the
right.
thing.
That's the other thing. That's the other thing that helps make him be a character who, like, suddenly we have some empathy towards, is he has a friend. Like, Entrapta, as much as she's a villain now, is still somebody who we like. We want her to see the light. We want good things to happen to her in the future. So her showing care for him makes the audience's relationship with him change as well.
It's so hard for me to look at Entrapta as a villain because, like, the way she's coded, she just is so... She doesn't really have, like, those same attachments that we do to, like, morality. Like, her only real attachment is to science, and so she just wants to learn things, whether she's doing that with the Horde or whether she's doing it with the Princess Alliance. Like, it's so hard to read Entrapta as a villain, even a reluctant one, because I really think she's just kind of doing her own thing.
Yeah, I think honestly that's something that is really cool about the show, that all of these villains. So there's Catra, who obviously, tons of people in the fandom love Catra.
Yes.
Entrapta, Catra's amazing. Entrapta, who we also love and have a hard time seeing as a bad guy. Scorpia, who, like, is trying her hardest and just wants to impress Catra and is, like, doesn't really seem mean ever.
No, never mean.
And then even in this season, then Shadow Weaver, who is an abusive mom, is working with the good guys, and they're saying, even though she did these terrible things and we're not going to let her back in our lives in the same way, maybe she can, like, she's not a lost cause, maybe. I think that they might be doing a lot of that kind of messaging, which I really like, that people are redeemable and that reconciliation can be healthy, or at least forgiving and moving on, not necessarily letting the person back in your life, but letting go of that anger and letting go of that animosity.
And I appreciate, too, that by, giving Shadow Weaver this background and by giving us more information about Hordak, there's never a sense that the villains are being, like, whoopified, or that, like, we have to feel bad for them, or that we have to relate to them. They're still very much evil characters who are doing terrible things. And so it really kind of drives home the point that, like, people contain multitudes, which I think is really neat.
Absolutely.
And I really respect and appreciate the way that they're going about that, because as much as I love a villain, especially a good villain with, like, a really good origin story, I think that the way that people tend to take villains from large franchises especially and be like, oh, well, it's not his fault, like, he doesn't know any better, it's really irritating.
Absolutely.
And I'm really grateful that that's not something that's necessarily possible with the characters in She-Ra.
I mean, I hope you're right, but I don't necessarily know that the people have responded that way, to be honest. I mean, like, I don't think, like, we periodically don't get to see as much of, like, the what is, like, Hordak's, like, colonial enterprise doing to people. Like, you see that, but it kind of fades in and out of focus. Having him have, like, this relationship with Entrapta, who we still like, but in part, also in part because we were introduced to her as our friend, right? I do think that there's this possibility that people will feel like, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm not necessarily as optimistic as you are. Maybe is the conclusion.
I guess because
but it's less
I
about
haven't
the show
seen it.
and more about the fandom. Maybe
Yeah,
is what
I
I'm
haven't
saying.
seen it, and so that's what makes me hopeful that I won't see it. But anything is possible.
Also, I do think that it's hard to be optimistic because literally this is, like, new ground that we're talking about. Before Steven Universe, there haven't really been shows that were this, like, queer and this kind and this complicated in children's animation. And so it's hard to sort of picture, like, because, like, Adventure Time opened up so many doors for Steven Universe, and then Steven Universe opened up so many doors for other creators that we haven't been able to see the results of yet, that I think are going to like bring huge changes to animation. Like, I'm very optimistic about that.
Yeah.
Like, Steven Universe was able to do such amazing things and is wildly, supremely successful in doing those, like, having like a gay wedding episode.
Yeah.
And having a character who is non-binary and intersex.
But, you know, I guess one of the...
Oh, sorry, no. You go.
But, you know, I think one of the things that made me think about from, like, Adventure Time is, in Adventure Time, like, they make, you know, it becomes clear to you, oh, Simon, a.k.a. The Ice King, is actually a tragic figure. But at no point are you sitting there saying, gee, I sure hope he's successful at kidnapping a princess and making her marry him. Like,
Yeah.
you're able to have sympathy for him as a mentally ill, you know, person, as someone basically with Alzheimer's, you know, and without making you want him to have his goals. And I think that's sort of how you should be, like, trying, but that's what the goal should be for this kind of thing. It's like, you can feel their pain but not want them to take over the fucking world and kill everybody. Like, you need to find something else that will make you happy, like, other than conquering.
For sure.
So let's talk about everybody's favorite new character, who is obviously Huntara. Obviously, as soon as she was introduced, she was everybody's favorite person because she's
so hot.
She's so hot. No,
And
I mean, yes,
freaking
because
Gina
she's
Davis.
like, she's
Yeah.
Gina Davis.
God.
She's Gina Davis.
It's so good.
Gina
Wow.
Davis, who is also on Glow, so she's just being amazing and being everywhere.
Oh, incredible.
I love her. So, like, it's great to have this, like, another amazing, like, butch woman character on a kid's cartoon.
Yeah.
And, like, she's a large person. She's mighty. And everybody is instantly like, wow, that's just super magnetic.
She's
really
the
attracted to
coolest,
her.
hottest, most awesome person in that bar, and she's a big, like 6 foot tall woman with broad shoulders and big muscles, and like an absolute butch. Like, she's incredible. She's like so wonderfully queer in a very queer way, where you can tell, like, she was designed by queer creators and not like straight creators.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trying to guess what a gay
Basically.
person looks like.
Oh, that's so true.
Like, they were like, oh, this is the kind of, like, dreamboat that we dream about. And that's Huntara.
Yeah, that's her. She's it.
And she has her awkward girlfriend situation, even, who's sort of, it's like, her lackey is her girlfriend. I'm sorry, that's just a fact.
I think you're correct.
So, you know, I'm not saying Huntara that she's the best person and is in a truly equal relationship with her partner. Like, but you know, she's a complicated character, right? Like, she leads them on this goose chase basically, and just wants to maintain her control. But she's certainly not evil. She's just trying to survive in a really harsh environment.
Yeah.
And I love the whole idea of, like, no one can survive on the wastes, except people do. So it's this idea that, like, the fascist system doesn't believe that it's possible to exist, like, outside of their order or against the people who they're fighting against. But, like, actually, no, people have opted out of that.
Yeah,
and they're
like,
on the margins, and they're living.
well, and it's like, I feel like there's a lot of that in this world. There's Beast Island that we keep hearing about, that we have no idea really how terrible it is or not. Like, it based on the Horde's description and like the good guys' description of the Red Waste and the Whispering Woods. Like, Bo lives in the Whispering Woods. That's where his family lives. And early on, they were like, oh, it's this, like, spooky woods place. And then, like, oh, there are ghosts here, but then it turns out not to be ghosts. So, like, I feel like all of these characters have such a small, misinformed worldview about the whole planet. You know, there's, like, it's a very strange thing, because they're so, like, small, but then they have, like, weird technology and, like, pretty complex cultures.
Yeah.
But it seems like these are very small cultures also.
Well, and I mean, we learned in season 3 that the Etheria is basically like a baby planet,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is really fascinating. We also learned that Adora is literally like an alien.
Yeah, right?
If we can just talk about that for a minute, because that was
But that was not a surprise.
It wasn't a surprise, but it was also like, okay, they're actually going to do this. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
I wasn't sure if that was really going to be the story that they told, and they're just, every time I think that She-Ra is not going to go where I think it will go, it does.
Yeah.
Which is really, really cool to see, and it's really, really refreshing, and I love it.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think the revelation that she's, comes from another dimension and came through a portal, it's like obvious, right? But I think that's okay, because that means it made sense. It does make me sort of question the whole idea of like being born with special powers, or you have to be different in order to do that. And it's one of the reasons why Bo is such an important character, is because he doesn't have powers. He's just choosing to do this because he cares about freedom and wants to do the right thing.
Yes, and he's not relegated to like the nice guy role.
Mm-hmm.
Because Xander was like that on Buffy. He didn't have any powers, and then he was like the nice guy, and it was the worst thing. Like, I constantly just wanted to slap Xander.
I mean, Xander had a lot of other problems, I think, that were just terrible.
So many reasons to slap him.
Yes, this is true. But, like, I don't have that experience with Bo, so he doesn't embody that trope, which I really appreciate. Yeah.
Yeah, Bo is fabulous. So, I don't know. I mean, She-Ra is literally a magical princess from another world. I think that, like, her questioning whether or not she had any choice in her destiny, and Light Hope being like, well, no, you have no choice, was a really powerful moment. And I think Light Hope is wrong, but that's something that she's going to overcome in the story.
I think at the end, when we saw Angela make that sacrifice, that was a part of Adora realizing that maybe her destiny isn't so forced upon her and clear cut and solid.
Yeah, I would agree. This season was really intense. Like, this season moved really fast.
So much happened.
So much happened. And it was all so, like, emotionally resonant. Like, normally when I watch She-Ra, I watch it kind of all in one fell swoop, and I get really, really into it. Mm-hmm. And with season 3, I really had to kind of take some time and process things that were happening, more so than in previous seasons.
What was the thing that you felt like got under your skin the most?
Honestly, Scorpia's whole arc. Because I relate to Scorpia on a lot of levels, and it just breaks my heart to watch her just constantly walking into these situations where she is going to get hurt, and I think she knows she's going to get hurt, but she almost like can't help herself. And so it's just so much to watch.
Well, Scorpia is a character who's on the bad guy side because she was put there by her family, basically. Mm-hmm. She's essentially a hostage who has decided that she's just going to try to survive as best she can as a hostage. So, like, I don't consider, to be clear, I don't consider Scorpia a villain. Like, I think there are things she could do to free herself, but, like, she's not in the same position as, like, Hordak is. Or as
absolutely,
or even as Entrapta is, frankly.
Yeah, and this is the world that Scorpia knows. So if she was to leave this world, like, where would she go?
But I mean, that's exactly what Adora did.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep. And Adora's a real hero. I mean, that's the thing.
Adora was basically born into the same scenario. She was born into, or like, brought as an infant to the Horde, didn't know any other world. But then when she saw what they were doing, she knew that it was wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that there's a family connection for Scorpia. Like, basically her family gave her stone to... and I think that there's a certain amount of her that just coming from this sense of obligation.
Well, and she says, too, in the Princess Prom episode that, like, the other princesses don't like her. And so I think maybe there's a piece of her that feels as though the only place where she can belong is a place where she's, like, evil but not evil, you know?
Yeah. I love in the episode where Catra's desires sort of rewrite the world, that for the Scorpia is like, I just don't like that her, I mean,
Yep.
Adora.
Yeah.
She doesn't quite know why, and she's this very likable, friendly person. And I feel like almost like people would be like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for Scorpia and Shira to meet each other and be friends because they're both nice people. And then here they are in the alternate reality, and they don't like each other because this is stuff that's just still sort of spinning out of Catra's own imagination. And Catra sort of wants everybody to herself, I think. Or maybe it's just some residual awareness of them being enemy. Ooh. So, it's possible that, like, just even though the world we were experiencing was sort of warped by Catra's desires, even despite that, Scorpia might have just still had an awareness that in the real world, she and Adora are enemies.
And
what did folks
even
think
more
about
than
that whole episode?
Enemies, Scorpia is in love with Catra, who is obsessed with Adora. And
Yeah.
I think it was partially that Scorpia is like, I know you're the one who is making it so that Catra doesn't even see me.
Yeah, I
You
think
know?
it's just one of those feelings that really kind of is so strong that it doesn't matter what else is going on. That feeling is going to come through.
Yeah.
For sure.
What did folks think of that episode?
I'm obsessed with, like, half robot Catra. That whole sequence is just so terrifying. And the fact that Adora is, like, racing against time to save the world, but she doesn't quite realize it. Like, there are a lot of very well-timed and well-placed pieces in that episode that are genuinely frightening, which I think is very, very cool, especially for a show that's, it's aimed at kids, and I don't think that it's inappropriate for kids by any stretch, but it's a little scary.
Yeah, it definitely, I don't think it's inappropriate at all, but I think it just challenges kids in a lot of great ways.
Yeah, I would agree for sure.
But looking at the world, I guess it's rewritten, and you have, King Micah is back. You have Glimmer sort of being able to be more childlike again. You have the Horde operating as she thinks it's supposed to, and being triumphant. Like, I mean, what do we think it says about her worldview? And were we just seeing the world as Catra wanted it to be? Was she completely rewriting it, or was it almost like an alternate version of the world?
I think it's kind of like It's a Wonderful Life thing where, like, what if Adora had never left, and then extrapolated from that?
Yeah, I would agree. It feels like Catra trying desperately to make all the pieces of what she wants work together.
Yeah.
And they clearly do not. Hold on one second. Tommen, stop it. Get down. Okay.
Aw.
I'm sorry. But yeah, I feel like Catra's trying to put all these pieces together of, what does Catra's ideal world look like? Catra's ideal world is where Adora never left, and the Horde is successful, and she's not treated like garbage, and everything, fits together. But that's unfortunately not how things work.
And also, it's just a really naive, in a lot of ways, view of the world. And that's why a lot of things don't work. Like, Catra doesn't want to have, like, emotional resolution and heal from trauma. She just wants things to go back to how they were, where she could pretend that they were perfect.
Right.
And because they keep on saying, like, everyone's saying everything is perfect. And it's obviously not. People are disappearing. Areas are disappearing.
Right. I think it's actually a great example of masking. I think it's a psychological terminology for that. Yeah, I thought that was a really cool touch. And it's something that a lot of shows experiment with, but I think this one did a great job of it in particular. Another favorite moment of mine actually was Entrapta breaking out the spreadsheets and data to make a scientific pitch to Hordak that he should let Catra live. She's like, well, the data shows, like, she knows how to speak to him as like a scientist and to manipulate that. And it was such a great way of sort of showing, like, her character's priorities and her ability to understand his character's priorities.
Yeah, she...
And then...
Oh, sorry. Just, she really can talk to him and work with him in a way that no one else can.
Well, there hasn't really been other scientists of that nature, right?
Yeah.
Like in the story, or that he's encountered. But yeah, like really knowing how to speak to somebody, it's not really necessarily manipulate, but like to get to speak to them in the language that they understand. And then despite that, you have Katra being like, I'm still going to assume that we're operating in a pure form of aggression and just say, fuck you to you. And, almost tossing Entrapta's work out the window, as it were, because she doesn't know how to do things other than the straight up opposition.
And she doesn't know how to do things other than chase Adora. That's all she can do.
It's her only focus.
Yeah.
She's so tunnel visioned.
Yeah.
She gets sent to this place to do this thing, this place to do this thing, that place to do that thing, and every time she's just like, okay, I'm going to catch Adora.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting about that, too, is that it comes from both a place of, like, yes, they're childhood friends, and they have this deep connection, and, Katra's in love with Adora, and vice versa, but then also, Katra's deeply jealous of Adora. Not just within the Horde, but also, Adora has this great new life with these great new friends, and now she's a princess, and she turns into a giant lady with a big sword. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much focus on Katra taking that sword from Adora at multiple points throughout the series that it's just like, the symbolism is incredible, but, there are so many layers to her being so deeply obsessed with what Adora's doing and how she can kind of foil Adora's plans. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I feel like if Katra could just focus on something other than Adora, she would maybe be more successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's more on the jealousy. She's also jealous that Adora seems to be like a chosen one. She's like, you got to be Force Captain. Shadow Weaver treats you better than me. And now you get to have these superpowers and you get to be this hero, and then you just leave me behind. Like, why don't I ever get the special things?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why don't I get to be the special one?
Which is legit,
Yeah.
But it's also so good to see her just flourishing in the Crimson Waste, like beating up Tongue Lasher, becoming head of a gang, like
wearing an awesome jacket.
Wearing an awesome jacket.
And she gets one for Scorpia, too. They have matching jackets.
Which also,
so
again, that's such a great, like, queer characters made by queer creators moment, where we have Katra with this leather jacket and Scorpia with this, like, sleeveless denim vest.
Yeah.
And they're just looking awesome, and so, like, those are visual cues that young queer people pick up on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, like, people look at that and they're like, oh, I should get a leather jacket, and then you become a leather jacket queer.
Yep.
Or you become a denim vest queer, Yep. And I love
These
that
are the
about
options.
the show.
Yeah. These are your options. Do we have anything that we folks really want to make sure we hit? I guess I wanted to get folks' thoughts around body diversity with the show. We have a lot of expertise in that area, and I wanted to make the most of that. We definitely exciting to see like large muscular characters like Huntera and Scorpia. I don't know though. Like it's not like we have everything there yet though.
Yeah, like Glimmer is chubby and cute in that way.
So is Spinnerella.
Yeah.
Whom we haven't
barely
seen.
see Spinnerella.
Yeah.
I know.
Angela
Yeah, I
is
feel
way
like-
taller than Micah.
Yes.
I
Which
really
I do
like
love.
that. That was awesome.
Yes.
I also really appreciate, there are two moments where we see Bo rip his full-length shirt to make it into a crop top.
That's incredible.
Which is just, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Yay for crop top representation. But, and May, you were talking earlier about how, Bo is very, very trans-coded, which I think is really great. And I do like that, I think, Alani, you talked about this in the episode about season 1, the fact that She-Ra turns into a larger woman when she... Why are my cats doing this right now? Why? Why are you doing this? Stop. But the fact that she turns into a larger woman is really cool. I also really appreciate that even in the Crimson Waste, there's a little bit of diversity. Like, obviously, there are, like, anthropomorphic animals, essentially. But there's also people who are tall and short and chubby and very thin, and so it's kind of neat to see that represented. Yeah, and it's definitely better than what we get in a lot of shows, which I
absolutely. But also with transcoding, I think a lot of trans women specifically, really relate to Scorpia. She's tall, broad-shouldered, has a similar body to a lot of trans women in a way that I think a lot of trans women really appreciate. And I know a lot of trans. I don't have to say I think. I've talked with trans women about this.
Yes. But I feel like we're still kind of waiting for there to be like a fat character who's like a princess, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. There's also, I will say, I also like that there's age representation. Like Frosta's 12, or was she like 11 and 3/4? And then Angela is, a mom. And Huntara, we don't exactly know how old Huntara is, but she's clearly not, a teenager. So we get kind of a diverse range of ages, which I think is neat. I also wish that we saw more. I mean, we have Hordak and we have Shadow Weaver, but I wish that there were more characters with different types of disabilities.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's always a goal, that just animation and TV as a whole medium haven't really hit yet,
for sure. For sure.
But this really was the season where we finally got more adults having adult conversations with each other. You got to see them interacting.
I agree. There was a little bit less focus on like what the kids were doing.
Yeah. Oh, and I want to talk more about Beau's dads.
Yes.
That was such a great episode, and to see these two dads being like so corny and so like cheesy in the way that dads are, but towards each other, was like such a great representation of a queer family in a children's show, and they weren't just there like in one scene. They were there for a while, and we learned a lot about them, and we got to see them talking to each other and interacting and flirting with each other, and that's amazing.
Yeah, I agree. That was a really excellent episode. And one of our writers for the Beat, Avery Kaplan, wrote about how that episode was really cool because Beau has to come out as a freedom fighter. And so even though he's in this really great, really loving family that's like very queer and that you don't really see on television in any form, but especially in, kids media. And then Beau still has this thing that he's like keeping a secret because he's afraid his parents won't accept him for it. And so to see that represented through this story where clearly they're fine with it. They're worried about him, but they're ultimately fine with it was very, very cool. And then also to see Glimmer and Shira kind of have to navigate. Because, I think that Adora is very socially awkward.
Yeah, absolutely.
In new situations. And so to be presented with these two, like, really, smart and friendly and dad jokey guys who are just kind of in your face kind, she doesn't know how to deal with that at all.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting to watch.
Well, then especially because her main other friend is Glimmer, who we see her only interacting with her mom.
Yes.
And it's a completely different relationship. And so then now she's confronted with not one dad, but two.
Yeah.
And how do you deal with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And a two-parent home that she's not familiar with either, you know, because it's been so long since her dad died.
And just to see dads at all in the show is novel. A lot of shows just don't have older characters in them.
I love that they're black or whatever the planet's version. They're like coded as black, they are black characters basically.
Yeah.
Even though it's not Earth or not African American or whatever. But I love that we're seeing a black gay family that loves each other and that is happy and that's big and healthy and just shown in a really great way.
Yeah, absolutely. I also really appreciate that they do try their very best to help fight at the end. Even though they really don't know what they're doing, they're just like, okay, let's do it. I appreciate that sense of adventure. I want to talk about the D&D episode.
Yes.
So So I'm somewhat new to D&D, and so to watch these characters embrace these various D&D tropes was very cool, and it felt like a piece of Noelle really inserting itself into the show, because I know that she also plays D&D. So that was just so much fun, and also I feel like it gave us so much more of the characters' personalities that we literally could not have gotten in any other way.
Absolutely. And just the way each character sees Catra.
Yes.
That was one of my favorite parts of the whole show.
Absolutely.
So fun.
Well, and it also calls back to the original and the original character designs, which is a cool little...
when they get to show off the old designs, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very cool little Easter egg.
That's an episode that I really do need to rewatch, actually. That's where I need to go.
It's so good. And then simultaneously, while they're doing all that planning, you see Scorpia trying so hard to, like, be the perfect fill-in and do everything that Catra wants her to do so that she can get Catra's affection. And yet again, she's foiled by Adora. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's very, very good. I also think that my favorite thing about that entire episode is Mermista, because she just doesn't care. Like, she has no concern. She's like, I'm Sira. Uh-huh. And that's her whole thing. She has no compunction about whether or not it's practical or whether it makes sense. And everybody else has these things that kind of make sense for them. And she's like, no, I'm just going to be this. And it's just going to be fine. Which I think is excellent.
Do you have a favorite Catra from that episode?
Honestly, I really love Glimmer's version of Catra.
The, like, femme fatale.
Yes. And I also love that, like, in her mind's eye, Glimmer sees herself as this, like, super badass, like, you know, noir freedom fighter who's just, like, kicking ass. I think
Catra calls her, like, arch rival.
Yes.
Not Adora.
No. Yeah. No, I think that's great. It definitely gives you insight into sort of how the characters think, which we don't get a lot of because so much of the show is through Adora's point of view.
Yeah.
And so it's a very unique way to do that, and I really appreciate every element of it. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, I loved Bo's Catra, just with the constant cat puns.
Oh, yes.
Like, she made a pun out of purr, like, 6 times.
Yeah, just constant purring.
Just constant purring.
Constant
I
purring.
love it.
It's so good.
And then she turns into a monster cat.
Yeah. You know, logically.
Of course, of course.
Well, and then, of course, when they go into the actual fight, the fact that they all are like, we're going to embody these these caricatures that we made of ourselves to the best of our ability.
Yeah.
And it works. It's a little goofy, but it works.
But it works.
Yeah, and it very much feels like a real D&D session, which I think is awesome.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And hopefully it gives some kids an opportunity to find out about the game who might not know about it otherwise.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
For sure. Well, I know that this year there was also that April Fool's prank that they were making a She-Ra tabletop game, and everybody was super bummed when it was an April Fool's prank.
God damn it. Well, maybe they'll do it for real now.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I would play it.
I would play it every day.
Absolutely. So.
Well, if folks have any predictions you want to make for where the show's going next, now's the time to share them.
I mean, this might not be popular. I really want a Catra redemption arc. Like, well, not redemption in the way that she's just gets off scot-free, but I want her to realize her mistakes and come around and change her behavior.
Mm-hmm. I think that would be really cool, especially because she gets so obsessed with this world that she wants to create that she literally almost destroys the world. Mm-hmm. And the only person who really counts himself as her friend anymore has to, like, physically stop her. I think makes a big impact, or at least I would hope that it makes a big impact on her moving forward. I also, like I said earlier, I'm very excited and nervous to see how Glimmer handles her mom's death and what that means for not only her as a character, but also for Etheria as a whole and for the Princess Alliance.
Also, honestly, I want to, I'm hoping to, and I have faith that we'll see a gay kiss. Like, I think that would be perfect, and I don't doubt that it's going to happen.
Yes, I would agree. I hope for that as well. Do you have a prediction for who that will happen between? The obvious choice would be Spinnerella and Castaneda.
Oh, I was thinking the obvious choice is Catra and Adora.
Well, I mean, yes.
Wow. I don't think that that's going to happen. I mean, I think there will be a same-gender kiss, yes, but I don't.
I think it's hard because it's She-Ra is a licensed property.
Yeah.
So, Noelle and the team can take them out of the box and play with them, but there's only so much that they can do to that extent. But
Yeah,
what do
that's
I know?
true,
Maybe
that's true.
maybe they'll, maybe they have that coming down the line. I hope so. I think that would be
I
great.
hope so too, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, they're not really selling toys, are they?
They have the Mattel dolls.
Yeah.
Oh, they do.
Yeah,
I really
like at
wasn't
Comic-Con.
sure.
Like
I'm waiting for the Funko Pops. They're coming.
Well,
They have to
there's a
be.
Funko Pop for everything, but I mean, like action figures for kids and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, they have Mattel dolls and like some play sets, I think.
Yeah, they have a couple. I think they have at least a couple action figures, and then they have the actual, like, not Barbie dolls, but Barbie dolls.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for joining me. Let our listeners know where they can check out your work. Samantha?
Sure. So, I am the managing editor at The Beat, which is comicsbeat.com, and then we are actually just about to launch the second issue of Fatventure Mag, which is fatventuremag.com, and I can be found on every form of social media under the handle The Verbal Thing, which comes from a Gilmore Girls quote. So...
And what about you, May? And making sure everybody finds each other on Twitter as well.
Yeah, so just last week I started a new job as a daily contributor to Out magazine.
Congratulations.
So
Ooh.
thank you. But so you can check out my work there. I do mostly culture and entertainment stories. And I'm Mey Rude on Twitter, Instagram, meyrude.com. It's Meyrude. Sorry that it's spelled weird.
Don't apologize. And I'm Ilana, Ilana_Brooklyn, ELANA_Brooklyn on Twitter, and I'm never on Tumblr anymore, which maybe is why I have no idea what's happening in the She-Ra fandom. That is also my Tumblr.
The memes are great. You gotta go to Tumblr to look at She-Ra memes. They're great.
There are really good She-Ra
Okay.
memes on Tumblr. I actually found a very large contingent of She-Ra fandom on Twitter,
Yeah.
which has been really fun.
God.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to count on you guys. Tell me who I should be following, because I'm really not involved in fandom beyond, like, all of my friends who just watch the show anyway.
I don't know if this is the right time, but we actually launched pitches today for a She-Ra fanzine that we're putting
Ooh,
together.
Nice.
So we're going to pay our writers and artists that contribute, and then any proceeds that are raised via Kickstarter, we're actually going to donate to Racist Texas.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Yeah, so I just shared that on my Twitter today, but that's it's called For Etheria. And there are
Incredible.
a lot of really great She-Ra fans that are following that account, so if you want to get started, you can hop on there.
Say that one more time.
It's called For Etheria, so the Twitter handle is Fans for Etheria, and we just launched our pitches today, but lots of She-Ra fans following that account, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And as always, Graphic Policy Radio is on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, you named it. Graphic Policy is our website, and I have 2 panels at New York Comic Con that I'll be promoting, and I hope you guys will come to those as well if you're going to be at New York Comic Con. One of them is on women in Jack Kirby comics, and the other is called Sandman Made Me Goth and Other Things I Learned from Comics.
Incredible.
So it's actually not just about Sandman. It's about pop culture that we got into because we read comics. But that certainly Sandman was a vector for a great many of us. So anyway, have a great week, you guys. And as we like to say, keep it geeky.
Hey, thanks for watching the previous video from Graphic Policy Television. Just by watching, you help support our site. Thank you so much. Now, if you're watching these videos, you probably care about geeky things like movies, television, comic books, toys, games, video games, you name it. You can go and subscribe right now to our YouTube channel to stay in touch and catch all the new videos, or check out our website at graphicpolicy.com. There's a nice link on this end of the video. But as always, thank you for watching. Keep on rocking and keep it geeky.